This is Real Talk, the inspiring success stories. May I please introduce our esteemed speakers in alphabetical order for this one. Dikshu C. Kukreja, Managing Principal, CP Kukreja Architects, one of the world's largest architecture and urban design firms, with offices in India, Vietnam, Japan and the USA. His work is rooted in contextuality and driven by a sustainable approach reinforced through innovative technologies. Also joining this panel is Rahul, Kumar, a Principal Architect, Rajinder Kumar and Associates, established in the early 1970s and regarded as one of the leading architecture, planning, landscape and interior design firms in the country. He has played a key role in the creation of contemporary architecture across the length and breadth of India. And chairing this conversation will be Sapna Srivastava, Editor, Reality Plus, an architect by qualification. Sapna forwarded in the field of architectural journalism in the year 2006. As an editor of Reality Plus, she is responsible to maintain editorial benchmarks and ideate new editorial products. Ladies and gentlemen, let's please welcome our esteemed speakers and our panelists and of course our moderator for this one as well. Please, with your love and appreciation for them. A round of applause for them, please. Please.
Thank you so much. An architect will always be an architect who was helping me adjust my chair, how it should be placed well. But getting straight into conversation, first of all, I'm sure everyone knows our eminent speakers, architect Dikshu, Kukreja, architect Rahul, Kumar, and not only them, but they come from a very powerful legacy of their fathers. I'm sure everyone here knows architect Rajinder, architect CP Kukreja, and their legacy now they have so wonderfully taken forward. Can we have a big round of applause for them? So as I mentioned earlier, let me ask the most cliched question. I'm sure so many times people must have asked you. Were you expected to become an architect, both of you? Or is it because the entire environment around you was such that it was a natural inclination? Or is it that you wanted to be something else and ended up as an architect? Dikshu, starting with you.
Okay, so good evening and thank you for having me here, and good evening to all of you. I have a very interesting tale of how I ended up being an architect. Because I think ever since as far back as I can remember, when I was 2 or 3 or 4 years old, we always used to go to, my parents would take us to monuments around Delhi for picnics, just the 3 of us, we would go for picnics, etc. So it was always monuments, and somewhere I think subconsciously that just affected me. I was inspired by that kind of place. Not that I realized that time, but I think later the memories always stayed back with me. And growing up, you know how when your parents' friends come home for dinner and they want to know what are you going to be when you grow up, and I started saying that I want to be an architect. And my father would always question that, and my father never wanted me to be an architect. So I just took it up as a challenge because I thought he probably feels that I'm not good enough to be an architect. So the resolve became even stronger that, you know what, I will only become an architect. So in my case, it is, and later perhaps I feel it was a reverse psychology or somewhere where he didn't want me to just take it for granted that, you know, you can't think anything else, so you're saying you want to be one. But yes, in my case, it was only and only one choice I had in my mind.
Yes, of course, the environment that you live in, you know, the influence of the parents, somewhere it always remains. But if you want your children to be something, or you know, you can adopt the reverse psychology that Dikshu just mentioned. Rahul, what was the case with you?
I wasn't so sure about becoming an architect. For me, it was a little different. School was playing a lot of sport and not having time to think about other things. So, but I was very fortunate that when I passed out from school, I had choices of doing engineering, architecture, or economics. I was fortunate enough to get into good schools. architecture school started a month earlier than the engineering schools. So the whole plan was go there, try it out, and if it doesn't work, you can always come back to engineering or economics. And both the other institutions were very here and there. So I said, fine, let me try it out. And 30 days into architecture school, I could not think of going back into engineering, which I was very good at, or physics or maths and subjects. So I was very good at. And it just opens up a part of your mind which, and then since then, of course.
Architecture is little creative because engineering becomes very, I think, after a point of time, very monotonous. Do you think? And it's the creativity that appealed to you?
It opened up a part of my brain which I had never used before.
So
I mean, one thing is that you are in an architectural home and you, of course those influences are there, but you don't realize it that much.
Subconscious, yeah.
Those influences that Dikshu spoke about, you realize when you're in college. When you select materials or how you react to color and textures, that's when you realize why your reaction is different than the others. So those are things which you kind of learn later, like he described the story of the monuments and all. But I never said I wanted to be an architect or I had a choice of being either. It just happened and I think I was fortunate that I had the choice.
And we are very glad that you both turned out to be architects. Now, obviously you also inherited such a popular practices from your father. How have you brought your own personality in that practice? You know, because sometimes it becomes very difficult to create your own personality, your own niche in that. Rahul, if you want to continue, how you created your own personality in the practice that you inherited, how have you evolved over the years as a professional?
I think it happens naturally. Just that generational gap. You grow up in different circumstances. The environment around you is different. I was fortunate that after doing my bachelor's, I could go overseas, study, work there. And that opens up, you see things differently. The economy changes, cities changes, professions. And you obviously have a very different way that you react to the environment or circumstances around you than, let's say, anybody who's a generation before. But when you heard so much about what you call the legacy of another generation doing the same thing, you have that advantage of seeing how they did it then. If Corbusier did a building in the 40s or 50s like that, he probably wouldn't do it the same way in the 70s and 80s. You know, so it happens naturally, and I think that if you're given the freedom, and I was fortunate that when I joined the firm, I had enough freedom to work on designs in the manner that I wanted. And so it turns out quite interesting. You have that benefit of that background and experience, and then you do things your own way. So
what you mentioned rightly is the generational gap. Because obviously at that point of time, those kind of materials or technologies were not available, what they were dealing with. By the time you came into the practice, things must have changed completely different. But as you mentioned, learning from that and then bringing in those new perspectives. Dikshu, how was it? How you created your own niche as a professional?
So, in my case, what happened was, here a situation was there where there were two very strong personalities. Like my father has been a very, very strong personality, and I think I am also a very, very opinionated person. So it was literally clash of whatever you want to say. I didn't say that, but yeah, it was somewhere where there were two people with very strong thoughts. And in my case, first of all, I come from a background where my father always believed in keeping work and home as two completely different worlds. So I grew up where I never even ever visited his office. Like most architects' kids grow up, visit the office, so imbibe something from there. I had never visited his working office, like even 6 or 7 years post my architecture when I had lived abroad for so long, but never used to visit his office. And the office was only visited when lights were literally out and one would go for a Diwali evening on Diwali for the prayers. But so coming from that, when I actually came into the office, I felt that it was a very different environment after having lived for so many years outside. And I started actually where I was given 2 projects to handle. One was from the private sector, which was the renovation of a hotel, a historic hotel in Kashmir. So I had to handle that, which was in Kashmir means you have to deal with snow designing, etc. And the other was the renovations of the Delhi Gymkhana Club. And my father felt that these are like walking on fire, 2 of projects where if you're going to deal in the rest of your career with bureaucrats, and due regards to bureaucrats if they are in the audience, but dealing with retired bureaucrats who are members of Gymkhana Club is another world altogether. So that was a very different experience, but all those experiences just had, obviously each experience continues to be a learning experience even till date, but we had different ways of our thinking. But we kind of coexisted in a way because my father strongly believed that he didn't want his design approach, his design thinking to influence me. And in that respect, I think looking back, I feel that he gave me so much freedom to allow my own thinking to sort of grow or exist. And that has been what it has been in my architecture journey. So he was always there for somebody I could fall back on, but it was something where even if I would go to him for seeking some advice, sometimes it was very frustrating because he would really not offer any advice. And I thought that it was very unfair on his part, but now I realize when I look back that it was the most wonderful thing that he allowed me to do, which is to grow on my own. I'm sure he was always there for me, and he certainly was, but he wanted me to just take my own decisions.
And I think that is true. That is why we know Rahul, Kumar and Dikshu Kukreja in the same breath, like we know CP Kukreja and Rajinder Kumar. They are as famous, and in fact, they have taken it forward so well, the legacy that they have inherited. But you spoke about your working style. You also spoke about, your own way of working. Which has been, I will not ask which has been your favorite project because, everyone says for father all kids are equal. But which has been your most challenging project and for which project you had the most satisfaction of completing? Rahul, if you start with you. Where do you thought it was?
I always feel, you get involved in a design or a project, and for so many years in your life, you kind of attach to it. But I've seen that once it gets over and people start using that building, those first few weeks, months when you go there and you actually see people interacting in that building, it's a great pleasure that one can't describe. It's just a very nice feeling. But in terms of what's your favorite, it's always the current one that you're working on. I mean, for me, I can't say that was my favorite. Yes, must have been my favorite 6 years ago, but at the current one, it's the one that I'm putting my mind, body and soul into. So it's always the one that you have, and of course, in time you forget what you went through in a project 10 years back. So amongst recent ones, we did an IM in Nagpur, which came out quite nice. I say it came out quite nice, not that the other ones are bad, but when the students moved in, they suddenly filled their social media pages with wonderful things, which I could never see. And you know how it is at the end of the project, there's a whole lot of friction going on, and that's not done, and that should have been done better. And suddenly one day, all those complaints stopped. And I was wondering, what happened? And I found out at the inauguration that the kids moved in and they started to say wonderful things about it. So obviously the credit actually went to the board or the people or the project team which created that. And I think that gives you a lot of satisfaction when people who actually are the end users, they start to enjoy those spaces and they start.
And they have good things to say about it, yeah. Dikshu, if I have to come to you, which project gave you most satisfaction?
So, see, for me actually, I am so passionate about architecture that I live and breathe it, right? It is my life. So for me, it is not just the physical space that we end up creating, but it is that journey as well. So I am very fortunate in that sense that we have been able to cultivate such wonderful relationships with our clients, that those relationships are something even when one looks back 20 years, 22 years, and you meet your clients still, or you continue to have been meeting them, those relationships are, I think, which are very, very special. And obviously that results in what is the outcome of the project as well. So I think there are lots of projects like that which have gone through that kind of an experience for me. And even from a challenging point of view, I would say that, it's the mindset. And I think we are very fortunate that in the office, the team that I have and we work together with, we have a large leadership team, we have a fantastic multidisciplinary team, and everybody comes together, and that's the ethos we've been able to build in the office. So whether it is right now designing the tallest building of Delhi, or the longest building of Asia, or the largest span structure that we have done in Yashobhumi in Dwarka, the size of one exhibition hall is equal to 4 soccer fields. It's a massive span of 250 feet. So all these things are so challenging. It's the world's largest LED facade. So these kind of things, obviously when you start a project, you don't know how to deal with it. But as long as the conviction is there, not just in me, with my team, that we are able to handle it. So from those points of view, I think these projects, each of them, in their own way, somewhere large, somewhere small, but they have had great experience, great challenges, and at the end of the day, like Rahul said, you have beautiful memories which stay attached to them.
So it's the journey that makes it satisfying.
Absolutely. Yeah,
it's not the end product.
No, that's
it's
the
the journey.
one of the byproducts.
Fantastic. I think that's a very good takeaway, that enjoy the journey. Challenges are going to be there, and that's what I think will make it interesting. And at the end, the user who's going to use that building, how they give that feedback is that makes it more satisfying. So fantastic. Then we talk about the biggest, the largest. Everyone nowadays talks about global economy, being global citizen. Architecture also now, to question both of you, is there a globalized approach to architecture now that we are seeing?
So I personally think when people say that the world is a global village now, everything has come so close, I think certainly it will, or society has always influenced the final outcome of architecture, and it continues to do so even today. So of course this globalization which has happened and continues to has influenced Indian architecture, and I think there's a lot of people who talk about this. I always believe that you need to pick up on the positives. You have to be wary of the negatives. You don't ignore them, but you don't have to dwell upon them so much. So I think the globalization's influence on Indian architecture, I feel, is very welcome. I feel you need to take it with a level of maturity, a level of understanding, a level of conviction. And if you do all of that, the outcome is something which is only going to add to the project. So whether it's in terms of choice of materials, choice of technology, choice of the form making itself, I always believe in one thing, that we need to be proud of our Indian culture, our Indian roots, and as long as you're proud of them, you're having the knowledge of them, then any external influence or global influence that comes your way is only going to add a layer of betterment to the project.
Rahul, what do you have to say? Is architecture seeing that globalized approach? Because everything now we are seeing global village.
Well, so this so-called trend started being exported out of the US many decades ago. And you started to see American designs being planted all over the world. And China is full of them. So that globalization story started in the 90s. And if you are a firm, a design firm, working in those environments, and you, let's say, get opportunities to do projects elsewhere, you see that trend flow. As corporations go global, and if you're based in Southern California and you move and make headquarters elsewhere, you will see that some of those tendencies go with you. And that's the culture of the company, and so design sometimes follows as well. For India, I think it's a little different. We work in an environment with cost and technology which were not comparable all this while, and of course now we have a lot more and it gets better and better. But if we look at what cost do we build our projects, it's nothing. It's still nothing to what you see the global cost of building a similar kind of a product.
Scale of project.
So the challenge for us is how do you give that international look, feel, style of building, but you have only that much to work with. But what is interesting is I think more and more people are now wanting a building that has Indian ethos in it. They are not saying make them traditional, but they are wanting that yes, we are, let's say, a university in India, we must be Indian. We are an Indian university. In hospitality, which we do a lot as a practice, it's always the trend. You do something in Kerala, you want to have a flavor of that place. You go to the Northeast, you want to feel that culture. So in hospitality, it comes naturally. But what is nice is that it's coming in other kind of buildings. So we are working on a retail mall in Chennai and a mart, and the desire is to have influences from Chennai and South India there. It's music to my ears because it's coming not from my side, but it's coming from our promoters here. And so it's, I think people are a lot more conscious. So, and of course with social media, you have global designs. I mean, you have them at your fingertips, and you know, which is also quite dangerous, by the way, because each one becomes a designer, and they have the right to their opinion, and whatever they come up with is attractive. There's no doubt about it. So, but it's nice to see that people are getting conscious of their culture. And of course, our Prime Minister and our government has a lot to do with that, to make sure that you proud of your roots where you are. It's wonderful to hear, be Indian, can you build with it? I mean, we do a lot of projects where I kind of silently make sure that Indian products are being used. And we gradually keep making that go up without being vocal about it, but that's something which I believe in, and I hope we can continue to do.
Like they say, think global, act local, and like both our speakers said, obviously what happens in one part of the world today, everyone gets touched by that. So you cannot be insulated, or now no one is in the silos. Everything, what happens in Africa affects India, or what happens in Egypt impacts the US. With all this globalization happening, you mentioned, yes, we are also, realizing our own culture also, probably, because we are now more aware of what's happening in the world, what are the goods and the bads. So, that awareness is there, as you said. The clients also have that awareness. But what are your major concerns about the future? What do you feel that we should be concerned about?
Good question. And even if you had not asked that, I would have brought out the concern. And that is a concern which affects each one of the people sitting here. And that concern to me is, what are you going to do? And this is a question to each one of you to probably introspect. What are you going to do when you step out of this room and you have to breathe that air out there, which is what it is? So I think what is a very serious concern is that we need to now pay such serious attention to the basic fundamentals of what is happening in our cities. And I keep talking about this so much that hoping that there will be a change one day. I have just completed a very important assignment with the government where I led this global initiative in the G20 on livable cities for the future. But then when I look at my own city and the kind of air that we are breathing, I think it is a cause of serious concern. So we can talk all that we want to about architecture, etc. But what are we doing to our lives? What are we producing or leaving behind for generations to follow? Today's newspaper talked about 1 in every 3 children today suffering from asthmatic problems. So I think what is a serious concern is that as India continues to urbanize, which it will, as India continues to develop, as it is very rapidly developing, we all citizens, we professionals, each one of us in our capacity, need to be very conscious of what we are doing to the environment. So while climate change is a global thing which we people talk about at a global level, COP is happening and all these other bigger picture things are happening, but the very aspect of what our cities are facing, whether it is the quality of air, and in 4 months from now you will read again in the papers about Delhi's level of water dropping and water becoming a dry city, and then after a few months when the monsoon will come, you will again read in the papers, or I'm on these panel discussions talking about the havoc that floods, rains create in every city. So there's a serious problem, and I think that is something which our city administrators, which our political class needs to wake up and deliver to us. They keep delivering all these welfare schemes come election time, but what they really need to deliver is these basics for us. So that for me is the biggest concern.
That's right. Rahul, what would you like to add, your concerns for the future?
No, so, we have a very large population. Our cities are choking. We need so many more sub-cities or smaller cities to come up so that we don't get that kind of density like, let's say, the NCR has. At the same time, aspirations of people grow, and we got to address that as well. So I think India has a challenging next 10-20 years where we need to build a lot. And how do we do that? By making sure we don't create this levels of pollution, cities and all other areas. But that being a larger topic, which obviously the construction industry contributes only a certain percentage. There are other issues as well. On a smaller scale, more on building and construction, what worries me is safety, building safety. We are building projects at a speed, using technology, labor, and all we want to do is finish the fastest, the earliest. Nobody says that I took 12 days more per level of slab to create a very safe structure. We talk about I did it in 10 days and the next one will be 9 days. I think that's a big challenge for us. We need to be making sure that we design safer and we build safer. And while some of the large contracting companies are well organized, their security, their safety procedures are there, and there are lots which are not there, especially when you go to tier 2 and tier 3 towns. And I really think we need to put a lot of emphasis on safety in construction and building.
That's right. What we keep hearing about bridges breaking down or a building collapsing. So safety concern, yes, definitely it is there. And as both our speakers said, India has the youngest population. We do need urbanization. We do need, housing is such a big lack of housing. We do need housing. We do need places to work, play, retail, everything for the young population. But how to balance it? And I think probably like Rahul said, we need to develop our tier 2, tier 3 cities. So that kind of decongestion and creating the pollution in the metro cities, probably we can look at that. But again, as you said, it is the city planners who will have to think about it very seriously. But what is also we have seen is these conversations that we have, like you said, we have conversation about flooding. We are having a conversation right now. But architecture is something which touches each and every one of us, tangibly, untangibly, and mostly it is the bottom of the pyramid that have the most serious impacts. How do we create how we take this conversation to the people? How we create this relationship between architecture and people? Because many a time I'm sure a lot of people out here do not even realize how architecture is impacting their life, their behavior. So how do we create that relationship?
So I think it's a very good question to ask, because a lot of times architects within their community are deliberating on why are we not being heard, or why are we not being able to make that impact that we should be making on society. And I feel the very simple answer to that is that maybe the society needs to be first sensitized about what role constructively, no pun intended, positively an architect can play on the built environment, on their lives, on their physical spaces of people out there. So I think that dialogue or that sensitization is very, very important. And this brings me a thought which I'd love to share with all of you, which is where I've in the last couple of years hosted 2 television shows. So one of them was on Disney Hotstar, where it's called Deciphering Design with Dikshu. And that show was where I dealt with conversations with experts from different fields of design. So it could even be fashion design, it could even be culinary design, because design surrounds us. It's everywhere in our lives. The chairs that you are sitting on or the table you are putting your hands on are designed, not just this physical space, even the glass that you're having water from or the design of this bottle is a design. So everything around has a design quality. So that's what that show was about. And this recent show, which was on Vion network, was called Tale of Two Cities, where again it is about going and talking to communities, and in this case I met with presidents and prime ministers from different countries and compared one international city with one Indian city and how the two share certain culture and design. So I think in our own ways, whatever one can find as architects, if we can engage ourselves better with society, the better they will understand what we can do with them. And that, I think, is going to hopefully increase the design quotient in our lives and make architects more relevant in terms of what they can contribute.
Rahul, what do you have to say? How, is it the architects who need to sensitize people? How do we, like Dikshu said, we need to create that awareness among people, how design is impacting their lives? How do we go about it?
Well, as media, you can do lots. So all forms of media, and of course your organization is doing a lot of events, but that's one way in which you get more of the audience and get more people, to be a part of discussions. Schools are one place where if children can get involved at a young age, they're very smart, they know about everything in technology and they can probably tell you a thing or two. But if at that school level, you can start to have a few sessions where they make a fashion designer, an architect, a culinary designer. And so it opens up their mind in a different way, or makes you aware of how things happen. Going forward, I think in public projects, there should be more public involvement. We often design buildings where it impacts a very large population, both for the private and the public sector. But if there's a way to get more and more, even if it's just to see a design presentation. Small example I'll give you, we did a project for the World Bank and I had to present in front of 100 people, right from the person who sits in the reception to the head of the World Bank. And they all went really my concept designs and questioned me, criticized me, appreciated me. But the fact that we were doing and doing such a process was fabulous. And if we can have more of those, sometimes I wish people in the armed forces, they live their lives and they give so much to the country, but the environments that they have can be so much better, whether it's housing, whether it's culture, recreation, clubs. Once or twice we did participate in some, but our designs could not be selected for various reasons, and I could feel in that group of people that they were not able to get what they were wanting. And so if there's a forum where there's more participation, I think that would help.
I think that's a good thing, especially if it is a public building. Have public, sitting through the presentations, giving their feedback after.
So educational institutions can do that. Like at the IIM in Nagpur, once they selected our design, I was presenting to a group of building committee, 20 or 30 people, But what they told me last minute was, you were on video conferencing with 4 other classrooms with our smartest minds. They were listening to every word. They questioned me for 2-3 hours, and they said that the final inputs that came to us on a design was a result of all those questions that those smart minds asked. So I wish there's more of that. It makes art asking much tougher. But I think at the end of the day, you get something which people appreciate a lot.
How many of you would like to have participation with the architects in the designing of public buildings? By show of hands, how many of would like to have not very enthusiastic participation? So probably
It's a slow process, but
slow process. But another good point is catch them young. Start from the educational institute. But if I were to ask you one advice that you would like to give to young architects who are coming into the profession, Rahul, what would be that one advice that you would give them?
Stay in the design profession. There's so much to do. There's so much to do. I mean, if you travel our country, go outside the metros, there's so many things to do in every town, every area. And often young architects get diversified into other related or sometimes not related professions. I do hope young architects stay stay as true to the design profession.
True to their design.
Not that they should not move into construction management or other, but we need our young architects to be there, and that's how you get better advances.
What would be your that one advice?
so there I will slightly be at variance from the point of view that I think it's a fabulous profession and it's a fabulous education. An architect has to learn from geography to history to physics to geology, you name it, right? All those aspects are covered in an architect's education. You are an architect yourself.
You have to know electricity, you
Everything,
have to know
literally everything there. So from that point of view, I think it's a great profession, great education. I would just suggest or advise the young architects to be passionate about what they want to do. And in India, there is a lot of opportunity, and hopefully soon, like you said, global, there will be opportunities for architects outside India as well. But what I feel is that with this kind of education, where I feel is that even if they step out of the architecture or construction domain and go into any field, I think they can make that impact there. So I feel they must not just stick to the design profession, I would say they can do any profession, but that strong passion and conviction they must carry that.
Because the study of architecture gives you that design ethos at least. It opens up your mind. So whichever field you may go, you can use those
Exactly.
skills.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. And as you said, if you do choose to be in the design, stay true to that. So fantastic.
I'm just being selfish, and I'm just saying. But there's so much to do, and I think
There is so much to do. Right?
there's so much to do. So you need that population, or you need that scale to build our cities, to build and improve so much which has been built over the years.
But let me come to my favorite question. What is the most and the least that you like about your work?
We were talking about that a little while earlier, but the most that I love about my work is the opportunity that this field gives you to deliver. I know my friends from all other professions literally envy the amount or scale of impact that we are able to make. So I'm a small guy, but at least I can make a big impact out there in society. So that gives me a big thrill. And the challenge of it is, what you have been talking about, or we all have been talking right now, is that how can we sensitize society in India about the importance of the physical space, physical environment, about the aspect of design, how important it is in our lives. When I've traveled around the world, I see in places like Scandinavia, or places like Far East Asia, Japan, Korea, people, the general common man is very sensitive towards design. In India, we are not yet there. So that is somewhere a little bit of a disappointment. But having said that, I do believe positively that that's bound to change over time.
What you don't like about your work?
That's the part I don't like. That when I'm meeting people who don't know whether they should call me an architect or architecture, They don't know the difference between the two. So that's what I don't like, that the awareness, not knowledge, the awareness of architecture profession in our country is
still very
really missing.
Rahul, what you like the most about your work and least about your work?
Well, the opportunity to meet a lot of people from different fields. You get to meet people in the industry, business, legal minds. I think that way architecture gives you that opportunity to meet people at the highest levels who make decisions and how they think. I think that's something that architecture gets you, dealing with an artist, dealing with the person who has to put in 10,000 people in the next 2 years into a building. So that way, of course, it encompasses everything. In terms of the work in the office, I love the first couple of months of every design. If you get a sufficient time and you are given a project and a design brief and people let you be for 3 to 4 weeks, that's probably the best period that I like. What's not so nice is having spent a couple of years in doing that design and seeing towards the end, percentage by percentage, it comes down to what it would have been. So obviously somebody has to finish it in the next 3 days instead of 30 days. So you look at all the ways and you know that those final touches are so important. And the way, I still say, if I get 75% of the design built, it'll be good. But we don't hit more than 75. That's the
Not more than 75.
Any percentage above that can make that project go to much higher levels.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, fantastic. I think, so from my takeaways from this conversation is, yes, one is that architecture impacts us as I said, tangibly, intangibly, unconsciously, consciously, it impacts all of us. I think the awareness, we just took the ballpark, how many people would like to be engaged in the discussion, and so that awareness has to be there. But our eminent architects are doing what they are doing, and we are so glad that they are doing that, creating those conversations and taking it to people. But thank you so much for being here with us, sharing those expert views, and as they said, Rahul said and as Dikshu said, let's catch them young, create that awareness, and this entire conversation is about that. So you don't like some parts of your work, but keep doing what you are doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Dikshu.
Thank you so much. And please request Sapna to please present a token of love and appreciation to our panelists as well.